It's Aaron Rodgers' world, and Steeler Nation is just living in it right now. We're in the waiting game. We're on Aaron Rodgers' time. And we know what that could mean. We know what is potentially involved with that. We've seen this story. We've seen this before multiple times over the last several years. But we got to deal with it because the Steelers don't have a quarterback and free agency has already started. And some of those main top options we were talking about that was on the Steelers' radar, those guys have found new homes, from a Darnold to a KP8 to a Justin Fields, even Danny Dimes, one of the more like low key quarterbacks in this free agency period. He just signed with the Colts today, so that leaves really just Aaron Rodgers and Russ left in terms of quarterbacks that are actually like viable starters. And up to this point, once the tampering period started on Monday, I woke up Monday morning. We heard from Schefter. We heard from some of these big-time reporters saying that the Steelers have been in serious talks with Rodgers. That was even before we knew Justin Fields was going to the Jets. That was even before we knew Sam Darnold was going to the Seahawks. And since then, he's still been a clear frontrunner for the Steelers. And now with Fields being gone and Darnold being gone, he is the clear frontrunner from the Steelers standpoint. I think that the team prefers him. I think it's obvious. They really prefer him over Russ at this point. But when are we going to know? When's the Rodgers decision happening? Because now somehow the Giants are apparently in the fold too in a serious way. They've been thrown out there as a Rodgers destination, but given the Steelers still have a quarterback opening and it's really between us and the Giants, how is this even a conversation? How are the Giants still legit in the fold? Unless it's just for leverage purposes. It's just, PR stuff. It's just some posturing. But if it's on Rodgers and he's the one making the decision between going to the Pittsburgh Steelers or going to the New York Giants, how are the Giants even in real consideration? Again, if you want to use the Giants for leverage and contract talks with the Steelers, that's one thing. But it seems like, according to Ian Rappaport and some of these other guys, that the Giants are a serious option for Rodgers. He's actually thinking about going to I guess, staying in New York and playing for the Giants. So here are the latest tweets. Let's get up to date on this Rodgers situation, because here are all the latest tweets and reports that you need to know, that we need to know about Aaron Rodgers potentially going to the Steelers. So we got a couple tweets from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette writer Jerry Dulac. Been covering the Steelers for a long time. He's in the know. We've been bringing up a lot of tweets from him over this the course of this offseason as it pertains to Steelers quarterback, what we're going to do at running back, just a whole Steelers roster and construction standpoint. Jerry Dulac, he's got some knowledge. He's also been wrong at some times. I mean, honestly, a couple of months ago, he said Rodgers was, or not even a couple of months ago, probably a month ago on Rich Eisen's show, he said Rodgers isn't even going to be an option at all. Maybe that was the case a month ago. Maybe that was more of a far-fetched idea, but now look at where we're at. Anyway, he says it's possible Russell Wilson could return to the Steelers if ongoing discussions with Aaron Rodgers fail to result in a financial agreement, per multiple sources. Had another quote saying something similar, but there's some added information here, added context. Russell Wilson wasn't at the top of their list. I think that's clear with how this free agency period has played out. When the Steelers entered discussions with Rodgers and free agent Sam Darnold. However, with negotiations with Rodgers seemingly at an impasse and Darnold and Fields having already agreed to deals with other teams, Wilson could become more of a possibility to be re-signed. So that's interesting. One little tidbit from this tweet here. We entered discussions with Rodgers and Sam Darnold. That's on Monday. So I guess we really assumed, since we didn't sign Fields before the tampering period started, he was gone. Like, we didn't even really consider him, because they're saying we entered discussions with Rodgers and free agent Sam Darnold. We had our talks with Fields the weeks and days leading up to free agency. He didn't respond. He didn't have an answer for us. I think once that 12 o'clock window hit on Monday, we just assumed he was gone. And our next top suitors were Rodgers and Sam Darnold. But if, at least according to Dulac here, if Rodgers doesn't sign, who else are the Steelers seriously looking at? And I think if we don't get Rodgers, we got to be looking elsewhere. We got to get creative. I don't think we can go back to Russ. And I'll get into that a little bit more as the show goes on. But we got a tweet from none other than AB. He's saying the deal's already done. I'm hoping he's right. I really do. You could take these tweets with a grain of salt, but 4 days ago, he said Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. And then he quote tweeted that today and says, CTESPN always has a first. The deal was finalized. Rodgers to the Steelers is a 2-year deal. CTESPN, most trusted source in all of sports. I hope he's right. I don't know what his hit percentage is on his reports over the last couple of years. I don't think it's anything amazing. It's probably just like a 50-50 shot in the dark when it comes to AB and CTESPN. I'm hoping where there's smoke, there's fire, though. I'm hoping AB is right on this one. If he's ever going to be right on one of these reports, I really hope it's this one. Because we need a quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers is, like, in my opinion, the only legit option left the Steelers have. If we're trying to get elite quarterback play. Or, I mean, again, we can get creative and try to trade the house for Cam Ward. We know that ain't happening, though. That's a highly doubtful situation right there. Ian Rappaport on Pat McAfee. What he said kind of goes hand in hand what I was just alluding to a couple minutes ago about the Giants being in serious play for Aaron Rodgers. He says, I don't know which way Aaron Rodgers is leaning right now. It's either going to be Steelers or Giants. I imagine that is a real tough decision. Now, my thing is, how is it a real tough decision? I don't understand. I really don't. I thought the Steelers were going to have the power position going into free agency. I feel like I'm wrong on that. With how everything's gone. Yeah, I feel like we have less power. It feels like Aaron Rodgers is in the driver's seat. If all these tweets are true, we need Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's where we're at right now. I think we actually are a little bit more desperate for Aaron Rodgers than clearly Aaron Rodgers is for us. I don't think that should be the case. If Aaron Rodgers is serious about winning football games, that shouldn't be the case. Not at all, because the Steelers, as I mentioned, versus the Giants, in terms of an organization that you want to play for and actually have a real chance at winning, it's us, right? Unless I'm missing something. Unless you guys tell me I'm wrong. Come on. We've had our complaints about the Steelers and how we've operated recently, but us compared to an organization like the Giants, come on. Come on, man. And especially after we just got DK Metcalf in here. And like I said, after we got DK, I thought we were going to be serious power players because of the opportunity we could present to all these available quarterbacks. What better receivers are you going to be throwing to out there? Of all the other quarterback needy teams, what situation was going to have a potential better offense for you? DK, Pickens, we're going to have Jalen Warren back. Hopefully our line continues to develop. We have put some serious resources in the offensive line. We got a Pat Freiermuth, Roman Wilson / Calvin Austin as your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. That's pretty good. That's some nice surroundings for a quarterback. I thought that plus just the Steeler brand, the standard that we have here, I thought that would stick out more compared to all the other teams that needed a quarterback. And ultimately, we'd have our pick. It would be down to the Steelers deciding who the Steelers really wanted between Rodgers, Donner, Fields, and Russ. But apparently we didn't offer Fields or Donald as much as the Jets or the Seahawks, and they went to those teams. I guess money talks more than the fact that we acquired DK Metcalf as a new receiver here, or us having Tomlin as our coach, or us being a top historical franchise and having that cachet with the Steeler brand. I guess money means a little bit more than all that other stuff. Learning lesson there. So now it's down to Rodgers and Russ. It's such a no-brainer move for the Steelers. We got to get Rodgers, but going back to what I was saying of who has the leverage, who has a little bit more of the power. The unfortunate part is I think it's Rodgers now, because the Giants are apparently really in consideration for Rodgers, and it's crazy to me. And I'm asking myself how, like, just how, if he wants to win games, if he wants the best chance to win and try to get back to winning a Super Bowl, add another Super Bowl to his trophy case. How are the Giants in real consideration versus us? If that's the main factor here, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, because if Rodgers wants to stay in New York and New York's offering him more money in a significant way and maybe offering him a multi-year deal, then that's a different story. I don't know how many years we're offering. Maybe it's only one. You obviously saw how we offered a contract to Justin Fields. It was basically, it was a 2-year deal on paper, but it was basically all the money was guaranteed in the first year. So it was a 1-year deal, and Fields got more guarantees going in that second year, which made it a 2-year deal with the Jets, and he preferred that. So if we're offering less in terms of years, in terms of money compared to the Giants, that could be a factor. If Rodgers wants to stay in New York, he really likes New York, doesn't want to move, that could be a factor. But if he cares more about his legacy and trying to get back to winning a Super Bowl and getting his stats back up in an elite way and being the Aaron Rodgers of old, if that's the biggest factor, then yeah, Steelers. That's it's not even a question. Again, unless I'm missing something here, I don't like. What am I missing? Talking about winning, talking about legacy, talking about having the best offensive surroundings. It's the Steelers versus the Giants. I don't want to hear about the Giants and their offense. Their offense is terrible. All they have is Malik Neighbors. That's it. That's literally it. I don't want to hear about their second and third receiver, Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson, because I was seeing some guys on NFL Network trying to sell me on the Giants offense as being like this sleeping giant with all their other players outside of Malik Neighbors. I don't want to hear it. It's awful. Tracy is their main running back. Get out of here. Theo Johnson is their tight end. The Steelers across the board, outside of Neighbors, honestly, Neighbors is probably the best receiver out of this whole equation, I would say. But the duo of Metcalf Pickens, Steelers O-line, outside of Broderick Jones, biggest question mark on the offense line. I can't even front. But 4 out of 5, I think we got solidified pretty good. A Pat Freiermuth at tight end, who's a top 10 tight end. Jaylen Warren, we're going to draft a running back. We're going to bring in another guy or two here to that running back room. CA3, 4-2 guy as our slot receiver, along with Roman Wilson. It's way better than the Giants. Tomlin as our head coach, organization structure, all that stuff. Better defense. Steelers better defense, at least on paper. I know how we finished the season. It was pretty brutal. But man, I don't even think it should be a question if the main goal is to win Super Bowls. Steelers versus the Giants, it shouldn't even be in the conversation. But if those other factors are seriously playing in, then Steelers may miss out. If he wants to stay in New York and the contract's significantly better for the Giants, I'll be disappointed if that's the case too, because I doubt staying in New York has to be that high on Rodgers' list. So then it comes down to team, being a good team, being a good organization, structure for Rodgers, and contract as the main two factors. And if Rodgers don't come here, it's obviously going to be the contract. We've lowballed him too much, which I think would be a shame. So we might have to make a concession in that regard. Give Rodgers a little bit more money than what you're initially offering, man. We just do it. We don't have any other option at this point, I think. If you want elite quarterback play next year, Rodgers gives us the best chance at that. Steelers might have to give some concessions, whether it's a little more on the contract, extra year on the contract, making a multi-year deal. And I'm good with that too. Take a chance on Rodgers for 2 years. Again, going back to Brady with the Bucs. You got 3 years down there, all playing at a very high level. I think one of those seasons, he finished second in MVP, threw for the most yards in the league. I think that was his second year. His first year, won the Super Bowl. His last year, I thought, was underrated. I think he led the NFL in game-winning drives. Still made the playoffs, even though that was kind of a broken team. Line was terrible. He had a lot of injuries on that offensive line. But yeah, Brady had 3 great years down in Tampa Bay. And that's what the Aaron Rodgers timeline could be here in Pittsburgh. And actually, he would be, I think, technically younger than what Brady was whenever he went down to Tampa. He's going to be 41 this year. 41. So 3 years, it'd be 41, 42, 43. Brady ended at 45. And Rodgers, like Brady, keeps himself in good shape. You watch him last year, he can still make all the throws. So if we need to give him an extra year for him to be satisfied, let's just give it a try, man. Take a chance, draft the quarterback in this class to sit behind Rodgers and to be the guy eventually whenever we move off of him. And yeah, he either retires or we part our separate ways at the end of this. But I just think it's such a no-brainer move at this point. Like there's really no other option. So if we gotta, like I said, if we gotta make a concession or two here because of how this quarterback landscape has played out, and it's really only Rodgers and Russ left, we got to do it. And whether that's him going on McAfee, enabling him to still go on McAfee, maybe that's a concession Steelers can make. Does Tomlin say, "Hey, bro, I'll go on an ayahuasca retreat with you to build up the quarterback coach bond"? There's that. Sign Randall Cobb as the ball boy or an assistant receivers coach. Do we got to make Alan Lazard our slot receiver? That's too far. The Lazard as the slot receiver, signing Lazard and getting him on this roster, that's a little bit too far. I'd be good with all the other options except for Lazard as our slot receiver. I think it's clear too, and this is why another reason why I don't think we can not have Rodgers as our quarterback next year. It's that not even is it the fans, not even is it me that doesn't want Russ back as our QB1. I think the Steelers are telling you that too, with how they dealt with free agency here. First option, Fields. Gave him an offer. What'd they do after Fields didn't give an answer once the tampering period started? They pivoted to Darnold and Rodgers. Russ, they keep saying in discussions this and that, but there's not a serious offer Russ's way. There's not serious discussions Russ's way, right? And I even saw something that, even though Danny Dimes signed with the Colts, that the Steelers may have looked into Danny Dimes as being the next option after Rodgers if the discussions kind of just completely fell apart on Monday. That was from Albert Breer. So Russ is the 5th option potentially. I think that's just a bad look. I think it's just weird then. If we don't get Rodgers goes to the Giants. I mean, are we really bringing Russ back as the 5th option, 4th or 5th option? Because clearly the Steelers tried to move on. Clearly the Steelers are unsatisfied with Russ as their quarterback too. It's not only the fans. It's not only me. Steelers told you some stuff with how they handled free agency here, which makes me think that we are going to get Rodgers, because maybe the Steelers would have taken Fields or Darnold more serious with their offers. Maybe they wouldn't have lowballed Fields or Darnold, but I'd assume they felt like, okay, if they don't take those offers, we're giving Fields and Darnold a great opportunity here. If they don't want to take those, we got Rodgers in our back pocket. But now we got to see how they handle Rodgers, because if they lowball Rodgers too, and Rodgers ends up going to the Giants, then maybe the Steelers were always good with Russ, as being their 4th or 5th option and having him in their back pocket too, which I think would be a big mistake. It's Rodgers or bust at this point. If it's no Rodgers, as I said at the beginning of this, we got to get creative. I think, you're making moves in the draft. Trade the house. Go get Cam Ward. That would be my next move if we don't get Rodgers. Sign Mason. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'll be scratching my head. I think it's pretty much right in front of us. Get Rodgers and then try to fill out the rest of his team in free agency, and then maybe draft a dude late first. Maybe it's Jackson Dart late first. Have him sit behind Rodgers for a couple years. We see how that strategy worked out with a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of like really good quarterbacks that end up being franchise guys and being elite. I mean, you saw two examples of it with the Packers, with an Aaron Rodgers being in both circumstances, him sitting behind Favre for a few years and Jordan Love sitting behind Rodgers for a few. Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for a year. Saw how he did. So it works. I mean, it happens. Especially sitting behind a guy like Rodgers. There's just a natural osmosis effect that comes from it. You get to watch an all timer, you get to watch a Hall of Famer, and Rodgers is at the point of his career. I actually think, and he, according to all reports too, he wasn't a bad mentor for Jordan Love at all. I think he embraced him. Favre was the one that didn't embrace Rodgers, but Rodgers did that with Jordan Love when he was still more in his prime, when he was winning MVP. So I don't see how he would be like a bad egg or a bad mentor to whatever quarterback we may take in this upcoming draft, knowing that he's older. I think he has some self-awareness about that type of stuff. So I think it's just the most obvious thing that we should be doing right now. Maybe, and if it's not a quarterback in the first, you take a quarterback in the second. Maybe you even try to trade back into the first, trade into the second, get a Milroe, get a Dart, get a Quinn Ewers, a Will Howard, Tyler Shuck from Louisville. That's where we're at, man. That's where I hope the Steelers don't go cheap on this. It's just weird how, and it's maybe not weird. It's just crazy how quick the power dynamics can change with this type of stuff. Literally just yesterday, probably it was 24, 30 something hours ago, I made a video saying how impactful the DK Metcalf trade was for us and how it gives the Steelers so much leverage going into free agency over these quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden Fields and Darnold take some better deals with the Jets and the Seahawks. And now we're just left with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson sitting out here. And I think Rodgers is the only real option at this point, I think. Let me read some of this chat, man. What's going on? We got Manny Meeks in the house. James Bush, 66. Thanks for stopping through. James is saying Rodgers. You're also saying draft Dart. So you got the same mindset as me. That's an interesting stat. Manny Meeks says Rodgers was ranked 6th in time to throw from snap last year. Russ was 28th. This could be huge to help our offensive line. Yes, Rodgers typically does get the ball out quick. It's a good point. That's actually a very good point. 6th in time to throw from snap last year. And he was with the Jets. I don't think the Jets had a better offensive line than us. I don't think either team had the greatest of offensive lines, but I think ours was still more formidable than the Jets. So I think Rodgers will be with a better offensive line. I mean, Broderick Jones is the real wild card. The most important position on the offensive line is also the guy that we're most uncertain with, Broderick Jones. Yeah, that scares me a little bit. I'm not even going to front. It does. But everyone else, Sam Alu, Frazier, McCormick, we got to see Fautanu last year hold it down over at right tackle for that one game. Extremely talented dude out of Washington, drafted in the first round in last year's draft. So I'm actually feeling kind of good about our O-line for the upcoming year, outside of Broderick Jones. But yeah, surround Rodgers with a little bit better offensive line. Those receivers, DK Metcalf, Pickens, legitimate deep threats. And then you got the two speedy slot guys, Jalen Warren, a nice running back out the backfield, helping in the passing game. Pat Freiermuth, again, a top 10 tight end. Not the best blocker. He's improved as the years have gone on, but he's a legitimate receiving threat too. How many he had 7 or 8 touchdowns for us last year. So yeah, in terms of situations, we just have a better situation than the Jets. We have a better organization. We have a better surroundings for Rodgers than what the Jets could get. The Jets are a mess. The Jets fired Saleh, their best coach, 5-6 weeks into the season. The guy that was actually helping their defense. Like their defense, to Saleh's credit, The defense wasn't the reason they were losing games early on. It was Rodgers and the offense trying to knock off some of that rust. And they were still floating around 500, but then they decided to fire Saleh, and then Rodgers and the offense started to get better as the season went on, started to click a little bit more, but the defense got worse and worse. Jets are they're just a mess of an organization. Rodgers comes here, you know who the head coach is going to be. You know what the hierarchy is. Rooney, Kahn, Tomlin, like that's the Steelers brass. That's the Steelers higher ups. Nothing's changing there. We do things a certain way. The standard's the standard, and we got a certain floor to us. We're going to be at least relevant. We're going to be at least winning 9-10 games. What we need from you is to help us get over the hump. Can you do that? Can you give us some vintage Aaron Rodgers? And with how last season ended for Rodgers, he'll be another year removed from that Achilles. He'll be thrown to a Pickens, a DK Metcalf. Have a competent offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith. It's possible. I'll bring up the Brady example. You take an all-timer who everyone thought was washed with the Patriots in his last year with the Patriots. Everyone thought Brady was done. I, like other people that knew ball, got to actually watch Brady and see that the arm strength was still there. He could still play. He could still move, all that stuff. It's just his weapons were terrible. That was probably one of the worst Patriots teams that he had to deal with. So if you put 2 and 2 together, you're like, all right, let's see. Brady still got the arm strength. Obviously, he's got the experience. Knows what to do pre-snap. Like you can't like just teach some of this stuff overnight. Brady's got a lot of years under his belt playing football and playing at a very high level and being clutch and knowing what to do in fourth quarter. He's an all-timer. You take that guy and you just put him in a better situation. What could happen? Goes down to Tampa, 2 big receivers on the outside, Godwin, Evans. He gets Gronk, even though it was a more limited Gronk at that stage. Still impactful. They end up signing AB as their third receiver. And that's why if we get Rodgers, I wouldn't be opposed to signing another receiver, signing another like veteran receiver to put in the slot, like a Cooper Kupp or a Stephon Diggs. Imagine that offense. They picked up Leonard Fournette in free agency, Tampa Bay did back then. But you saw what happened. You surrounded Brady at the time. He's a little bit more up there in age. But Brady, he was a pocket passer anyway. Like Rodgers is more of just a straight pocket passer, carve you up with his arm. Now, the mobility was a part of his game. I think it's not like he's not mobile. Watch some of his games last year. He can still move around. Maybe not to the degree he was when he was 27, 28. But you could take that guy. I'm telling you could take that guy, what we saw from last year with Rodgers, and in the hopes, too, that he's only going to be getting better, only going to be knocking off some of that rust from the Achilles injury. You could take that guy. If you surround him with some talent on offense, a decent offensive line, it could be dangerous. I'm telling you. Manny Meek says, final point with Rodgers. This is a max 2-year relationship with the money, and then the money will be off the books. Just do it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just get it done, man. We got to take some swings. We got to mix it up. Clearly, the Steelers are telling you, too, they want to mix it up with how they're handling who they're prioritizing at free agency at the quarterback position. Trading for a DK Metcalf. Bringing in Darius Slay. I still don't even – what's going on with Darius Slay? I still don't even know what's going on with that. Maybe we'll find out tomorrow because the Eagles will officially release him. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think that's the latest, unless we signed Rodgers or Rodgers signed with the Giants while I was doing this video. But that's where we're at right now. That's kind of where we're at. Just wait and see mode. A decision's got to be made soon. It's just got to be made soon. Tomorrow is like officially the free agency period. I think it's 4:00. And the Jets will officially release Rodgers too. It's kind of like the Darius Slay thing. Both teams, the Eagles and the Jets, said they're planning on releasing their guys, but it couldn't happen until, I guess, the new league year started. So maybe that's a part of why we're in this waiting period. But all right, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we have some good news. Be here 6 p.m. Wednesday, Thursday. Stop through. Stay chilling. Here we go, Steelers. Peace.